Ian,
Yes.
you were Emily's computer instructor inside, as they have it. So tell us a little bit about what your role is in the system.
Sure. I'm employed there as a casual teacher, so I go in 2 afternoons a week, and we offer a couple of computer certifications there. So students have to choose to be in my class, and they can become Microsoft Office certified in there, in some of the Microsoft programs, or they can get another computer certification called an IC3 certification, and it could be part of their programming that they need to be in school and kind of doing some programming. Mostly it's for the students who are trying to upgrade their skills, because maybe they've never used the internet, or not that we have the internet, but haven't used software in there and want more skills so that when they do get out, they're not so far behind. So yeah, I'm in there 2 evenings a week, hopefully helping them get through the material and then able for them to write a test that certifies them. I kind of facilitate that.
And how big are your classes typically? How many do you have in the class?
It's a range. There's 2 compounds, so there's like a main compound, and that class is usually about 10, because there's about 10 computers there. At the MSU, at the minimum site, that class is smaller. There's only about 5 computers in that lab, so it has to be less than 5. And there's people coming and going based on them leaving or new people arriving, so you try to keep it full.
So, just because I'm just interested really, so you know, one of the things that I've really learned through my conversations with Emily and through conversations with people who've both worked with or be associated with Emily through this process has been how interesting and how appropriate the education system, the prison system kind of is in some ways, because it's actually not just, you know, you always have this concept of, well, someone's inside, but actually certainly the facility that Emily spent most of her time in, there was a lot of opportunities for her. Right, and a lot of opportunities for her to actually grasp the bull by the horn, as they say, and actually say, okay, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to do this. So do you find, like, are your classes oversubscribed, or generally, or do you have to kind of battle with people to attend? I mean, or
so
mixture?
I would say that the prison houses about 200 inmates, and in the school in general there might be 90 inmates, which is quite high. The female prisons have quite a high proportion of inmates to students. Like, a lot of our population is in school. I do not believe that's the same in the male institutions. But I know for my computer class, it happens after hours, because I'm a full-time teacher during the day at a local high school, and it is heavily oversubscribed. There's a big, long waiting list of people that would like to get into the class. It can be tricky to get them in because they might be going on parole, or they might be, have some other programming they need to do as part of their official programming. Sometimes that gets in the way of them taking my class, but no, my class is got a lot of interest. It's been going for a couple of years now.
So how do you determine how gets in it? Is it like is there a fast track system? Like, did Emily, who popped in, go on this fast track, and the next day she's like, oh, I'm in class?
Well,
because she's like a fast tracker in my mind. She
was keen. Emily was a unique student. But how to get to the top of the list? The timing has to work out, which is tricky, because if you're in there for 20 years and you want to get computer certified, it's kind of a waste of time getting you computer certified when you do finally get out and the computers won't look anything like they look like today. No. So you go to the bottom of the list.
Okay.
If you are needing the high school credit to graduate, to get your high school diploma, I also offer a high school business credit as part of the certification. Excellent. So they go to the top of the list. If you need the high school credit, you go to the top of the list. If you're going up for parole soon and there's not enough time to do the course, then you're off the list. So there's different things that make people bump up the list, but you try to get the right timing and the right level. So Emily, she was highly motivated and a go-getter when it came to getting through the material and getting it done. I have a couple of students in my class now who are they're in there for life, they're in there for violent crime, and they're not going anywhere in the next 10 years, but they're still in my class and enjoying it and getting their certifications along the way. So for some of the students, I would say it's just a nice way to pass the time and to learn something. For some of them, it's I really need the high school credit, and for other ones, it's I'm getting out. I'm a secretary by trade, but I've been out for 2 years now. I need to brush up my Excel skills. So you get different clientele, I guess.
So do you have different, like I know you teach like a Microsoft Office 360 or whichever version it is, certified. Yeah. Do you offer advanced courses as well? Or is it kind of, so someone who's in there for a few years and they've done the first one, but actually, I mean, I'm fairly experienced at Excel and Office, but it is. I mean, Excel is like a deep black hole, right? If you really want to get into what you can do with a spreadsheet like Excel, you could spend all your time on it.
You could.
So do you have people who kind of then want to do more and more and more and get...
Well, there is a limit. There's only so many ones that we have the tests for, that we can certify for. So there's the regular Microsoft Office, and then there's the expert level. So far, one person has got the Word expert level. Excellent. And somebody who's in there right now, actually for a violent crime and is in there for a long time, has been trying to get the Excel expert level for 6 months now. And she keeps learning more and trying the test and learning more and trying the test. And she's just enjoying the journey of learning it, to be honest. She might never actually I couldn't pass the certification test unless I studied up on it. It's pretty hard, very hard, I would say.
I mean, it's admirable when people actually study.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in you have a couple of options, don't you? You give up, you can stay the same, or you use it to your advantage, really. Yeah. And I think you're interesting, right? It probably is, and we should ask this question perhaps later. But it probably is very true that the female, in my experience, the female population in general seems to always be in school and studying. It's to a certain age group, right? And so, like you said, you probably find that many more inmates.
Yeah, I've probably had 150 students go through the class in the 2 years. Right. And I can maybe think of 3 that were really disengaged and, they would fall asleep there or really weren't into it. Right. The rest of them are happy to be there doing it, and thank you so much, we'll see you next day, Ian, or whatever. Like, very, very grateful. The adult student is a pleasure to teach after teaching during the day in a high school. Yeah,
I can imagine, really. So, how long have you been doing it there for? 2 years?
This is about 2 years now.
Okay, and you just teach once a week there?
I teach 2 evenings a week.
2 evenings a week, okay. Yeah. So, let's go back to your first encounter with Ms. Emily.
Right.
Give me your best memory.
Well, one of the teachers in the school in prison, there's a school in there, said, I've got a student for you. Her name's Emily. She's really keen. So when I met Emily, my first impression was her little Harry Potter glasses she was wearing, which, you don't see enough Harry Potter glasses these days, but in terms of her willingness to try something and to just dig into it, for example, we had offered an entrepreneurship certification. It's an American certification, but there's no course to teach with it that I had, but I had the tests that they could try. And Emily was like, I'll try that. And I'm like, you haven't done the course? Sure, here's the laptop, go ahead. And she sat there we were there until 9 o'clock that night. Class is supposed to end at 8:30. So I got in trouble from the guards for staying late because they're supposed to be back in their rooms being counted, but Emily and I were just sitting there working through this. She was working through this test and we're laughing away. So Probably the first impression was she was in prison, but her mind wasn't in prison. She was inspired and really always happy, which is bizarre. After working there for a couple of years, and certainly motivated to get through. So she got through my tests. I think eventually she didn't do one of the tests because at that point she had kind of started her cons and kernels and was kind of going full bore into that. But yeah, very motivated, very
So
happy.
she was your ideal student, really?
Yeah.
Funny,
Yeah.
motivated, intelligent.
Yeah. You don't, it's funny, I was thinking about it, it doesn't come around like that. It hasn't come around like that since.
Right.
Lots of motivated students. I've got lots of motivated students in there. Lots of laughs with all the students in there,
right.
So I have a great time.
Right.
And part of that is probably how I approach being a teacher.
Absolutely, it tends to reflect back on you, for sure.
But
yep.
yeah, she was unique in that she brought all those three, and very keen. Always wanting to talk about books she was reading and things she was learning, and it was never a woe is me, which you hear a bit of, but you never heard that from her.
So how do you think other inmates felt about that? How was it, so like, so you have a class of 10 people, although they're all on computers, I can't imagine Emily not being the centre of attention in some respects, right? And she does that, some of it's somewhat natural and some of it's somewhat what she creates, right? But she definitely brings something to the room.
Yeah.
Right, and that is, it's a real asset and many people resent it. And personally, I hate that she's happy all the time, and I'd much rather that. Well, I'm happy all the time.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, how did the other inmates kind of deal with that? Did you see?
Yeah, I wonder, were they intimidated by it because she could not be her mind in prison, her body was there, but she was somewhere else. Was that intimidating for them? I never heard anybody complain about it.
Okay.
And to be honest, there was a couple of other students in the class who were friends of hers, who maybe were roommates, I'm not even sure, but it was contagious enough that I would say the whole class, if anything, was almost too much fun for everybody. And I wouldn't say intimidated from what I saw, but certainly it brought out the best. It did bring out the best in everybody.
So in many ways, she's a natural leader, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Really, I mean, what you take from that is that she's, if she raises the spirits of everyone in the room, then she's a natural leader.
Yeah, the attitude was contagious,
right.
I would say. Might be a way to put it.
So did you feel like, when she went on parole, do you think, Emily's gone? Did you feel like suddenly, oh no?
Yeah, people are always going. People are always, I'm going up next week, I'm going up next month, they're coming and going. But on thinking about what that classroom's like now,
right.
You could hear a pin drop most of the time, kind of the cackling laughter that gets the guards to look in and make sure everybody's still behaving themselves.
Right.
That's not there anymore, I guess.
Right. Just Emily less.
Emily less. Maybe it'll come back. I mean, there's some great personalities still in there, right? It's not a bunch of moping around people. Prison is a surprisingly positive place, I would say, from what you think when you watch the media. Would you say
it's a positive place in both the male and the female spaces you've been to?
I've not spent any time in the male institutions, but there's a lot of smiles, and it's just a normal classroom to me. Like when I'm dealing with a student, the fact that they murdered their husband is completely irrelevant to me. Right. And it's just an adult having a conversation with an adult about Microsoft Excel. Right. Or what's happening on the weekend, or something else. So
do you have you must have mixed ability then. If you have a roll on, roll off program, you'll have people who know zero-ish, and then people who are experienced because they've just come in.
I have somebody who I remember teaching computers to. She's still there at the MSU, and she's been in since before the internet. So teaching her about the internet was like, not that we have the internet to demonstrate, but even discussing it and learning about it.
I was just, there's an IP number on the board behind you, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to Joe before, and he said, what's an IP number? And I said, well, that's really where the beginning of the internet came from, and when it was ARP, and that was how you could define in the world where it was.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about how difficult it must have been, even for us, how difficult it was to imagine a time without it.
Yeah.
Right? And no one could conceptually see it. So absolutely, if you've got someone who's inside, and that actually must be quite frightening for someone, really, because it's a global thing, and yet you can't experience it because you've...
No, and there's discussions about releasing kind of a limited internet, that wouldn't have a block list, but would have an allow list. So it would allow these 6 or 7 sites, which that would be fascinating to see that as that rolls out, that rolls out. Now, whether that'll roll out will depend on the government at the time and the pressure that they might have.
And it kind of should do now, because it's like giving them a book, really.
Yeah.
And there's no real difference between, I'm sure at one point there were restricted books, right? You couldn't read this, for sure, and you probably still can't, but it is a fascinating...
Well, you imagine from the education perspective, it all's done by pen and paper and correspondence. Yeah. And so you have this time lag of, not all of it, but a lot of it is, if you could move some of that to, an e-learning platform that has the content there and could sit there and do the research on a limited internet and hammer out an assignment and submit it right away and start something else and not have this back and forth, it'd be a lot more productive getting through courses.
So how do you think, is there like it's an education rating system, is there like an educational rating system that goes on in the prison sector, or is it really just a question of these are the courses that you're able to offer, and does each space have a different, like each unit or each prison has a different kind of educational thing, or is there?
The courses are fairly standardized. You'd be surprised, because there's a private college that we work for that is inside of the institution. Okay, and it's the same private college that operates in the male and the female institutions.
Right, okay.
So we're all certified teachers.
Right, okay.
I serve up the same course to my students at prison as I do during the day. Right, it's just modified to not include web design that includes this and this, because there's no internet to do that on. So yeah, it's surprisingly standard with what they would see at an adult education center. Like, we're inspected every year by the Ministry of Education. Right. There's so many parts of it that you wouldn't realize that you're in a prison if you were part of it.
So, just coming back to Emily briefly, so how long does she take your course for, approximately?
I'm not sure how long she was at the MSU for. Probably 4 or 5 months, maybe.
Right.
Maybe a little bit less than that.
Right. And so basically you just enjoyed her as a student, really? Yeah.
It got to the point where she had done my course, or as much of it as she was going to do, because she had moved on to some other pursuits. Yeah. But during my class time, I would often get stragglers kind of popping in and chit-chatting and seeing what's up and whatnot, and Emily would bring articles that she had written or ideas that she had. So it was like, I felt like it was a brainstorming session.
Excellent.
During class, often with her about what that looks like when she's pulling off the business outside.
Right. So I understand that Emily had a meme club.
Yeah.
Which was on your computer time and stuff. Yeah. So tell me a bit about that.
And that was one of those entertaining things that brought a lot of laughter. So on the inmate LAN, as it's called, the network that the inmates would use, there's no internet access, obviously. And even even clip art has been disabled, really, like the searching of the clip art, because you would need the internet for that. So what they did is they took 10,000 clip art images and just threw them in a shared folder, and they're called like image 001, image 002. So you don't know, they're not categorized or anything. So when people need clip art for a project, they kind of roll their eyes and they're like, how the hell am I going to find a picture of a basketball? So that's the pre-story about what the clip art is like. It's a painful experience. So they would take clip art and they would paste it into a Word document, the clip art that they like, and then they'd use that as their resource for getting clip art into projects. So, you know, you got to do what you got to do. But what Emily decided to do was take this clip art, or at least some of the highlights of it, and make memes out of the clip art. So prison-themed memes that really, if you were to see it, Simon, you would be like, that's interesting. But on prison, if you show it to one of her roommates or one of her friends, they would sit there and nod their head, yeah, that's exactly it. So it's a series of crappy Microsoft clip art that are memed up with kind of prison terms and prison memes. Well, for what was cool about it, I thought, was it was just something that nobody had done before, that just was like, you made something and passed it around and had a laugh, and you didn't offend anybody, and you weren't creating a problem, you weren't creating property that people couldn't have, or stealing or borrowing or all those kind of prison things, but you were just creating something for the enjoyment of others.
And did other people catch on? Did other people start making memes, or was it generally just Emily?
You know, nobody could make them like Emily. I haven't seen any since. The originals were great. I remember running them off the photocopier a little bit so that she could send them home, I think. I probably shouldn't have done that, but they were funny. They were really funny. Yeah, and old school scissors. Cut and paste, old school cut and paste.
Oh, that's funny.
Glue stick and scissors and pen. Yeah, it was great.
That's funny. So, what do you think you gained from it?
Well, teaching adults is very different than teaching children, and the fact that they're inmates almost adds to what you get out of it, because the inmates, that student who appreciates, you know, the opportunity that it is, and realizes that this is what I need. This is what I was doing before I went in, and I never understood it, and now I can do a VLOOKUP in Excel and understand it, or I can do a mail merge or whatever it is. So you get, I find you get a lot more appreciation from an adult student, specifically the ones that I see.
And of course, you're like having a visitor, aren't you? Really, in many respects, you're like you're their update on the outside world of that day from your perspective, right?
I know. Now it's like, and I thought that that's what I would be. Is I'd be like saying, "Hey, there was a hurricane yesterday," or "The Saints won last night," or whatever it was. But they know the news before I know the news. You know, I'm at work all day, trucking away, and they're, you know, word travels pretty fast, and TVs are there.
Pulse, as they say.
They know what's going on. I'm often getting the news from them.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, so is there anything that you think you'd like to bring to the table in the education side of the system that you haven't yet been able to, or that you're working on, or?
Well, I would be very interested to see if there is the potential to get a very limited internet available in the prison. I do think there's two schools of thought. There's the punishment school of thought, like they can't have that. That's a luxury. That's a, you know, that's something that they don't deserve. And then there's getting access to that is going to help them from their education perspective, and help them significantly improve their chances of rehabilitation. So I think the statistics are, if somebody completes a level of education in the prison system, they're so much less likely to reoffend on the outside. There's been studies done on that. So really, whatever we can do to make sure that the students have the opportunity to get education in something that's of an interest to them, something that you know, is going to help them on the outside, and if it's something they're interested in, it's something they'll engage in. So, you know, it's not just job security, but I would like to see more things offered.
I think that's very Well, I think you're 100% right. I think that's a very well-known behavioural science fact that punishment has less of a positive outcome or any outcome versus reinforcement of behaviour by, by additional learning, by by improvement. There's definitely a lot of evidence that supports that for sure. Excellent. Okay.